Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the LACA State of the Nation webinar, How at Risk is the School Meals Service. We're just going to wait a few minutes for people to join. So bear with us. We've had best part of 400 people register for today, so it might take a little bit of time for people to log on, given the numbers. What we've got in store for you today is a panel discussion chaired by LACA board member Neil Porter, with the people you can see on your screen now as your panelists, who Neil will introduce, and they'll introduce themselves shortly. We will then follow that with a presentation from Jessica Crane, just updating everybody on LACA's allergen guidance and the work that she's been doing preparing that project. So we are getting up to a couple of hundred people joining now, so we'll just wait another 30 seconds or so, and then we will start the panel. If you can please put your questions today using the Q&A rather than the chat function, but do use the chat function to comment and introduce yourselves, but please put questions, any questions, onto Q&A. Okay, we are probably getting to that point now, so I'm going to pass over to Neil Porter, who is going to chair the first part of today's session.
Lovely, thank you, Andrew, and welcome everybody. So as Andrew said, we nearly hit sort of 400 attendees for this, so that's our highest number yet. So this is our 5th webinar for LACA, so a warm welcome to you all. Today would have been a key date in our diaries, probably for most of us. We would have been at the main event. This would have been the main day of the main event. So just on that note, I just want to take the opportunity to say to you that with events as they are, and much of the platforms we're all currently using, we will be next week launching live on the website some awards for nominations to be submitted, with a view to having an awards event in the autumn, whether that be in person or whether that be remote. So we've got the primary schools of the year, secondary school of the year, unsung hero, and supplier of the year. So I would urge you please to look on the website next week and submit any nominations for the awards. As Andrew has said, if you can please use the chat link for any sort of discussion you might have during the next hour, and use the Q&A button for any questions you might want raised. We'll try and answer as many as we can today. Any we can't answer today, then we'll put up on the website and respond as we've done before. So, and after this session, we are going to have a poll, which is quite groundbreaking actually. So I'll involve you in that a little bit later on. So that's enough from me. So just to really welcome all the panelists, I'd like to welcome Meg Longworth, Director of Nutrition Sustainability from Compass, John Figgins, Head of Catering Services for West Sussex County Council, Michael Hales, Managing Director for Juniper Ventures, Anita Brown, Service Manager for Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council, and finally Mark Davies, MD for ISS UK Food Service. So a warm welcome to all panelists. To start us off, given the title, How Risk is the School Meals Service, I'd like each one of you, please, if you could, in 2 or 3 minutes, give us just a quick summary account of how COVID has impacted on you as individuals and your business, please. So starting with Meg.
Yeah, thanks Neil. Good morning everyone. My name is Meg Longworth. I work for a company called Chartwells, which some of you may know. Chartwells is a contract caterer in schools, so primary and secondary schools, as well as independent schools, colleges and universities. I am the Director of Nutrition and Sustainability, so I'm really pleased to join the panel today to talk to you from a health and wellbeing perspective in terms of school meals. And also my remit covers medical diets, and my colleague Jessica's on the call as well. She's going to do a session, as Neil's explained, after the panel discussion on allergens. But I think from a business perspective, how COVID has affected us from a health and wellbeing steer has been a lot around education, and a lot of our focus during COVID has been on educating families and children in schools. And it's been something that Chartwells have done for many years, but we didn't want to take our foot off the pedal. Now more than ever, it's been important to ensure that children are still learning about food and health and well-being. So the COVID kind of pandemic has affected my role in terms of ensuring that with our chefs and our other team of nutritionists, we are delivering food and nutrition education into the homes as well as the classrooms, and that's something we've really focused on. In terms of menus, there's been a lot of work happening with our menu development teams, and I think what's become apparent is flexibility is key. And I think, you know, I'm sure we'll get some questions on menus throughout the session today, but it's been that one size has never fit all across the schools anyway, and I'm sure everybody on the panel would vouch for that. But now more than ever, it's about flexibility and speaking and communicating with our parents, our families, our teachers, our schools, to make sure that the solution that we had in place for the key worker children, the solution that we've had in place for, you know, in June when some of the children came back, but importantly, the solution from September is going to be fit for purpose on a school by school basis. And I think the final key adjustment that COVID's brought to my role and my team's role has been around medical diets. I think it's always been at the forefront of everyone's mind. It's been something that we speak to our catering teams about on a daily basis. But what's been key is making sure that we build a fit for purpose solution from September for this as well. Catering teams are going to have a lot on their minds. They're going to have a lot of new stuff to think about. And what's important is that medical diet stays at the forefront of what they're thinking about, especially when we're hoping to continue to feed all the children that we did before who have an allergy and intolerance. So that's a bit of a snapshot whistle-stop tour of how COVID's affected my role, and I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions.
Lovely, thank you, Meg. If we can go to John next, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm John Figgins, so Head of Catering Service at West Sussex County Council. Thanks for the invite today, Neil. It's lovely to be here on what would be the main event, and with a clearer head than what I'd normally have on the main, the day after the night before on the main event. So thanks for that. In West Sussex, we've got 283 schools. We've got a blend.
I'm not hearing John.
I can't hear either.
I think we might need to come back to John.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies, John. We've lost your sound. So all the best people have technical hitches. I think we're having one. So can I come back to you, John? So if I can, let's go to Michael then, please.
Okay.
You've gone on mute.
You're on mute, Michael.
I'm now back in the room. Anyway, hope you can hear me. So my name's Michael Hales. I'm the MP here at Juniper Ventures. For those of you who don't know, my team and I operate a school meals service providing about 26,000 hot, healthy, nutritious meals each day. Well, normally we do, along with retail catering units, school and public building cleaning services, and the blossoming hospitality business across the estate of about 150 sites, mostly across East London. We have about 850 people working for us, operating in 1,050 posts. I've been in the industry, in the sector for over 30 years now. I know you can't believe that, looking how young I am. And I'm also LACA's immediate past chair. So for Juniper, the coronavirus pandemic has hit us hard. There's no doubt about that. We were about to complete our second year of trading, but with March being traditionally a good trading month for our sector, as we all know, it could not have come at a worse time. Not that there would ever have been a good time, as it were. However, we have carefully planned and considered a revised budget. That's something I've never been able to do in my whole career, is to revisit a pre-agreed budget. But as we hear so often, these are unprecedented times. We're now confident, provided that pupils do return in September and there is no second spike leading to a second lockdown, that Juniper will be well placed to continue to be a success that it has been becoming. So life on Zoom has allowed us to continue to win some new business too, as well as keeping us in touch with our teams to ensure no one's been isolated. We have been able to furlough a small number of staff, but only those within our retail, secondary and hospitality sectors, as our primary school business is publicly funded. And as you know, that means you're unable to furlough. We've also been very conscious to protect our most vulnerable colleagues and have over 100 staff still being shielded and receiving full pay. And we've also made up 20% pay for those that were on furlough. We've not had to make anyone redundant, and nor do we intend to. We have invested a great deal of time and training into our members of our Juniper family, and the last thing we want to do is to lose any of them. And I just want to say I did receive a distraught call from a former employee who had been tupied over to another commercial contractor 18 months ago. She was in tears because she'd just been told she'd been laid off due to COVID from next week. I find that quite amazing, a little bit short-sighted, as I believe that in September, that'll be one of our most labour-intensive months on record. And it's particularly, I feel, cold-hearted of this company to lay people off just to save paying them during the 6 weeks holiday. So shame on you. But that aside, calm down. I believe that as a sector, what we must do is ensure that wherever possible, we are cooking hot, healthy, nutritious food for as many pupils as possible in September. This is what will protect our business longer term. We cannot be allowed packed lunches or cold lunches to become the accepted norm. Or even what I heard yesterday from an industry peer was that one of their schools had asked parents to send packed lunches in with their children in September to make the school day easier. As a sector, we need to be flexible, I think as Mega said, and do all we can to ensure that schools can provide a hot, healthy, nutritious meal each day. And that is fundamental to protecting the future of school meals. Now, as I stand down from my soapbox, leading up to what was expected to be the national lockdown back in March, during those first initial weeks, we were able to work very closely with public health and set up the first community hubs in London. With no longer being tied to the local authority, we had the autonomy to procure from where we wanted to, where we needed to gather together a range of support from our fabulous suppliers. And we managed to get 30 tons of foodstuff, including 40,000 toilet rolls, if you wonder where they all went, for the elderly and vulnerable of Newham community. There's still 2 hubs running, and they're still providing 500 boxes a week to the community. So in addition to this, we're still providing 1,200 food parcels to the most vulnerable pupils within Newham as well that aren't attending school during lockdown. So, Neil, thank you for that. I'll be quiet for a little while. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Can we try coming back to John?
Hi, you hear me, Neil?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll log back on. So I'm not sure where people thought I got up to, but I was just giving an overview of the business. We've got 283 schools in-house and self-providing, and also using service providers. We look after the Meals on Wheels service, which has been really great service at this time with the COVID as well, and really picked up an extra 30% of business in that area as well. We employ...
It sounds gone again, John. Sorry. Okay, we'll try and come back to you in a minute. Anita, we come to you, please.
Good morning, everyone. Delighted to be here. It's just a shame we're not all together. And like John, I think it's the first time ever on a Thursday morning of LACA week I've not been a tad worse for wear. Hope everybody's keeping well. I'm head of Catering, Cleaning and Stockton Council, producing 14,000 meals a day, over 60 schools. I also look after care homes, civic catering and events. And basically anything else nobody else wants. COVID's had a similar impact to us that Michael had, and initially our main concern across the council was how to feed vulnerable children. So we put up a huge marquee in the back of a swimming pool car park and started to distribute packed meals from there. We were delivering to 4 family hubs, and in the schools that closed, those families were directed to family hubs. We have some very deprived areas, as we all do have. So that was interesting in itself. And then 2 weeks from lockdown, we then obviously had to focus on feeding families that had vulnerable children from all sorts of ages. And in general, shielding families. We had 150 of our own staff shielding at that point. But the catering teams, as they always do, rallied together and came in on most mornings to 25 kilo sacks of flour, reducing them down to handfuls in bags, to making sure all our families were all fed. We gave everybody a home recipe card with all the ingredients we could give them, which was somewhat difficult because some weeks we could only get spam. But that's another issue. Those of us like Michael who started work very young, when we've done 40 years nearly, will all remember the lovely spam fritters we used to get. But people have been very, very grateful for the food we've provided. We're still doing, majority of schools have opened now, and we're still providing packed meals. We are currently looking at September, what we're going to do in September, and we've had lots of requests for additional service points, how we're going to deliver meals into classrooms, can we go on to disposables? Well, that's not only costly, but it's not really the environmentally thing that we're trying to do as a council anyway. We're significantly going to be reducing menus. We've been liaising with suppliers to help them along the way. We've provided supplier relief across this whole process, and have been buying in, obviously, from all walks, all local suppliers that we possibly can to still help our vulnerable families, and that's what's happening now. We've had some schools that went on to the voucher scheme, some with some levels of success, others with no success at all. We then found that some families were sending their kids to school and getting vouchers, which was an issue in itself. And now the issue we have is how we're going to charge schools moving forward, because the some schools, Academy Trust is saying that one of the formulas we were looking at was from March last year to July last year, doing an average of the free school meals, universal free school meals, to charge them for them. Obviously, there's no paid meal income. Most schools have come back and said they will pay us a maximum of up to 70%, which is obviously not furloughing any staff and still having shielded staff now. It's the labour bill that everybody else is in the same boat with, the labour bill. And we're just looking now at our budget crisis and how to move forward with that.
Great, thank you very much, Anita. And finally, Mark.
Morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I know John's not back yet. Lots of nods, thank you. Hi, I'm Mark, Managing Director of ISS Food Services, do lots of schools up and down the country. It's fair to say, felt a bit like a ping pong ball over the last few months, bouncing around from all sorts of different things that have been going on within the organisation, all the way back from March, when we turned our whole organisation into a service that was delivered for the key workers and vulnerable children, and supporting all those schools that needed to close, and where we needed to create hubs and hampers. And it was phenomenal few weeks as we started hitting the peak. And I think, you know, without wanting to repeat what everyone else has said in terms of supporting our customers and our suppliers and our employees through what was a very difficult period. We didn't furlough our employees for quite a long period of time. Instead, we chose to adopt the government's policy procurement notice, particularly O2, and obviously getting an understanding of how that would work was important to us. We did a lot of liaison with the Cabinet Office, with the Department for Education, to make sure we had the right mechanisms for, in essence, the cost recovery that we needed to work through the lockdown. Some variants of success, and obviously we needed to use furlough where the funding wasn't available within individual school circumstances to cover it off, and the staff have taken it really well. We continue to engage with them. If they've not come out of furlough when schools have opened, we'll obviously look to make sure that they come back ready for September. A bit like Meg, we've also looked to not just provide food services, but also to continue with food education. And a bit like this, we had food education campaigns that we switched from being delivered into school to virtual. So many of you may have seen the Green Fingers gardening campaign that we did in early May, which was quite fortunate because the weather was quite nice. And of course, now we look to September, and our mantra is hot food first, but recognise that that's difficult. We sort of have a real empathy and understanding for schools that want to manage their bubbles more easily, particularly at the start of term, and so are choosing packed lunches. but we want that to be as short as possible whilst we then get into steady state and then start delivering that hot, healthy school meal service that we just crave to get back to. Similar to others, we're also mobilising. We're doing virtual one-to-ones with hundreds of employees, which is a very unique experience, I think, for everybody involved. But actually, that feels quite normal, doing normal things like mobilising contracts at this time of year, which is actually quite nice. And then in and out of Zoom meetings like this is something I think we'll probably stay with forever, but maybe us being together at LACA conference right now is exactly where I'd rather be if we could. So hopefully everyone comes back. We don't get that second wave that we all fear. We all keep ourselves safe, and our school meal service can get back up and running as close to normal as we can come the new year.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you all for that. I think if we could go into one of the questions we've got here, and I think with the guidance that came out last week, which was leading us for all schools to be fully open in September, which probably came as a surprise to some. And I know schools are frantically preparing themselves for managing the students on site. But if I can come to you, Anita, in terms of what challenges is that giving you to fulfill a full catering service in September?
I mean, even just from meetings that I've actually had this week, across our borough, we've got different requests from different schools. We've had some schools that have asked for us taking hot meals into classrooms, which is self. We've gone onto trays and fast food trays. We're no longer on airline trays, so that itself has a load of different issues. People have asked us to go back to airline trays. Goodness gracious me. So that's one issue. People have asked us for disposables, which is an issue for the council, and of course the cost and the time that it'll take to pack them all up and take them into classrooms. And one of the focuses is here that the schools, I know we're all about hot meals, but I've got to think about staff safety as well. You know, we've got to look after, we have a duty of care to our own staff and the areas they're working in. We've got all the kitchens all sort of panelled out with the footprints and the ways to go and everything else. So we've got to look after our own staff, taking stuff. We don't want to be taking loads of food through schools. There are other health and safety issues. One of the suggestions that's come forward that we're sort of working on at the moment is that different classes come into the dining rooms on different days. So sort of, if you like, class 1, 2 and 3 will come on a Monday, class 4 and 5 on a Tuesday, and on the other days they will get packed lunches delivered to the classroom. So at least they're getting 3 hot meals one week and sort of 2, just do it on a rolling programme, and that seems to be quite a popular option at the moment. Some schools are going on to pack meals, and we have suggested that if they want to do it, let's just do it in the first 2 weeks, just to get themselves settled back in and our own staff settled back in, because again, our shielded staff are not going to come back till September now anyway. Most of the cooks have done a full risk assessment training on the whole COVID thing. I think it was about 90 degrees that day, and we had to sit outside to get them all spread out, bless their hearts. And we're doing hot lunch bags hot grab bags in secondary schools, just with pasta pots and noodle pots in, so it's just grab and go. But there's just lots of different issues at the moment, and because schools are asking for lots of different things. I mean, we've had 7 schools yesterday. Can we have more hot trolleys? Well, we can, if I could get them, and we had pots of money. There's just so many different issues that we're coming up with. I don't have a magic wand, and I'm sure we're all in the same boat, that we'll just have to do our best with whatever happens, because we really don't know who's going to come back lock, stock and barrel in September, do we?
No, absolutely, and I think, as you said, I mean, we're all using this sort of phrase and schools are working in bubbles with year groups or classes, and that will lend itself to other issues from our staffing perspective as well, if they're trying to separate out the service across different parts of the school. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mark, have you experienced the same sorts of challenges and issues?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different things that could either affect the number of children in school or eating, and of course the things that could cost more money, whether it's the additional equipment or whether it's staggered lunch times or different outlets. And we're trying to find those solutions as cost effectively as we can, but also we're in conversations with the Department for Education to convince them to adopt PPN04, which is to try and create a transition model for the industry to adopt, which was released by Cabinet Office, designed to last until the end of October. But then the DfE said that they expect it to close at the start of term, which is just not realistic. And I've tried to explain that to them in as explicit way as I can, as to what could affect the way, and what we don't want is caterers to suffer the burden of that, but also schools to suffer the burden of that, and there to be an arrangement whereby we worry less about the cost of something and more about making sure that we get the hot meal service going back up and running in the way that's safe, but there's still the children who enjoy it. I think they're listening. I hope they're listening. We'll carry on fighting the good fight.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So in terms of, I've talked around it, or we talked around the challenges there, and maybe there are always some sort of opportunities from these sorts of things as well. So Michael, if I come to you, do you think there's opportunities for investment in new equipment or technical solutions or menu options? What's your experience?
I think there will be a huge demand for equipment, certainly come September. I think there will be, like as Anita just mentioned, around additional service points and things like that. It's whether our suppliers hopefully will be able to meet the demand. Hopefully they can. And it's who is going to pay for these additional service points as well, certainly with regard to hot trolleys. We're in discussions with a number of our schools. We've put forward some suggestions for each site, how we feel the service could operate in their school. Sadly, some of those schools are saying that they're not going to make a decision on that until they've obviously organised their own organisation of the day. And you need to appreciate this is also a really challenging time for school SLTs as well, trying to ensure that they're meeting the expectations of the government's guidelines and ensuring the safety of the pupils. And only yesterday afternoon, one of them said, we're not having a governance meeting until the 14th of August. So for us then to be able to get everything in place for the 1st of September, that is going to be a real challenge. But we are offering various options to schools and hoping that they'll make a decision as soon as possible. We have training we need to do with our staff. We have equipment we need to get in, new risk assessments to do in every single site. So there's a huge amount of work to be done. And yes, I think there will be the need for equipment. I'm not sure about vending. I think someone at some point mentioned talk about vending. I'm not sure that's something I want to see creeping back into schools. I would rather see them talking to the staff and integrating with the staff, and if need be, having additional service points around the school. I think vending is a retrograde step myself, and not something I'd want. And if we did it in any degree, it would only be for a very short-term basis. So yes, I hope our equipment manufacturers are busily producing stuff.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Michael. John, let's try coming back to you. Have you experienced the same? Do you think there's opportunities in investment in equipment or services?
Just going back to some of the stuff that Michael was saying, really, schools have got access to additional funding for exceptional COVID costs. Now, they wouldn't necessarily associate that with the school meal service, but there is an opportunity there for caterers to make a plea to schools to use some of that money in order to support a service. Currently, that only runs up funding until the end of July. So I know there's pressure on the DfE to increase that funding. And that funding.
We've lost you again, John. Just dropped out. Sorry. What we're trying to do is in terms of following up on that response, if we can get that sort of put in and on the website, and we'll get that followed up in due course. So if we can move on to maybe the impact on menus then, Meg, and we talked about grab and go, cold options, trying some schools looking to provide hot. What from your perspective to meet the school food standards, what do you think the challenges are there?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. It's a good question. I think back to what I was saying in the introduction, we've had to ensure that there is something for everyone in every kind of school setup, because different schools have got different levels of capability. So what's become really apparent is actually just ensuring that there is variety. We cater in 2,500 schools. So as you can imagine, the breadth of different menus we've got across the board has been quite outstanding. We've got reduced menus and restricted menus because that's obviously something that, as Anita's referenced before, it appears more achievable for catering teams to be able to ensure they can still offer hot food, but the variety might not be as vast. But we've also got schools that have asked to go on the menu they were always intending on using and making it work. So we're offering a variety of a mixture between kind of hot meals with packed lunch offer as well, and a reduced menu offering kind of one main dish with jacket potato, sandwiches, etc., vegetables, salad bar served in a very different way to what it would normally be served. And then we've got full-blown menus that we're ready to go out in autumn, winter anyway. I think what's interesting, we've been visiting a couple of schools more recently, and it's really impressive to see that actually the children have taken to the whole social distancing and the new way of doing things quite well. I was really, really impressed in a couple of primary schools we visited. So they understand the social distancing piece, they understand the changes that they faced. And actually, I think schools like that have been catering for key worker children and for kind of some of the year groups that have been back at school, they will have more confidence, I imagine, to go back on a wider and broader menu than some of the schools that have been catering for kind of 2 or 3 children. And I think that has literally been the variety. We've had some schools open with 1 or 2 children in it, and some schools open with 60, 70 children in it, and they've made it work. So from a menu perspective, it's remaining flexible. School food standards wise, I think everybody on the panel would agree that where possible, these should be adhered to. They've been put in place to guide schools and caterers to ensure that they're offering a balance, and it is doable. It just requires a little bit of work and communication with the school, but wherever possible, please do ensure that you're following the school food standards and offering that variety, because it's absolutely essential now more than ever from a nutrition perspective. Those children need a healthy hot school meal, and we hope that the majority of children will be able to access that.
Lovely, thank you for that. Looking at the Chris, Michael, did you want to say something?
Well, all I wanted to say was I think has covered that brilliantly. But this is very much, I believe, at a crossroads here. We need to be showing everyone the importance of a hot, healthy, nutritious meal every day versus meal vouchers that some have suggested may come to replace universal, be a challenge to universal infant free school meals. So the ending of year time will be a disaster for this country's health, as we all know, and also a huge loss of business and jobs across the way. So I've been really delighted to see that funding has been agreed for the next academic year, but we need to gather and shine and gather support over the coming months and making sure that we're promoting hot, healthy, nutritious meals and keeping those packed lunches away from schools.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Again. Sorry.
Can I just, there's a question being raised here from Paul Flounders. Recently, there have been a lot of media attention on meat-free menus. What is the panel's response to this? So Meg, would you like to respond to that one?
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting one because, of course, with sustainability being at the forefront, a lot of the plans and strategies of schools, it's certainly something that we're advocates of. Completely meat-free, I think variety is key. So I think, we've supported things like meat-free Mondays before. We always offer vegetarian options, no matter what element of our service, whether it be sandwiches, salad bars, pasta pots, there's pizzas and things, there's vegetarian options available. I don't think things should change drastically now versus before in terms of ensuring that the menu is completely meat-free. But I think variety is key. And again, it comes down to education and mindsets and ensuring that parents, families, children are aware of the nutritional value of vegetarian meals as well as meat-containing meals. But I don't think it's a steer that people should feel pressure to go down to completely take meat off menus. It forms part of a balanced diet, and yeah, done in the right way, it should be something that we offer.
Okay,
vegetarian.
The question. Sorry, you dropped out.
That's okay. That's fine. Thanks, Neil.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just dropped out on the end there. There's another question here raised by Linda Mitchell. How do the providers on the panel think they will be able to meet the needs of bubbles and social distancing in schools and meet the extended lunch service as proposed by the government conditions for opening schools? Anita, I think you touched on some of this anyway. Did you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, I mean, like I've already said, that the way we're looking at when the schools that we've already been in this week, looking at bubbles is like the rota system on the classes seems to be the best option and the safest option. So one class will come into the dining room at a split time. Dining's lunch service will actually start at 11:30. That's one of the examples. So they will stay in their own bubble, and then the class 2 will get packed lunches taken to their classroom, so they remain in their own, and that will be a rota across the week. So that we're just trying to keep, and again, our own staff, we'd like to keep them in the kitchens as well. I don't want them running around schools interfering with other people's bubbles.
Okay, no, thank you.
Neil, I'll just say that we're following the same ideas that Anita is as well. They are systems that seem to be working well, and we'll be mimicking those as well. We have been mimicking those. We have been delivering some hot meals to classrooms in disposable cardboard boxes, a bit like a Leon restaurant takeaway meal, those sorts of boxes, which has been really popular in some schools. And it's again about keeping that hot meal in place, really.
It's a fine balance. There's another question being posed here, and I'll maybe ask Mark to respond to this one. A couple of the panelists have mentioned sustainability. Obviously, the need for this hasn't gone away with COVID. How important is this to the catering service, and how achievable is it with all the other challenges?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I mean, everybody that you hear says that once COVID is over, sustainability will be one of the #1 issues that will face our world. I think it's fair to say that the school meals service has been ahead of the game when it comes to sustainable food over the last 10 years. And I think that, yeah, COVID has probably created a blip in terms of how and where we really focus on sustainability versus safety. And there has been a bit of a trade-off between those two things. But I think once we get out of COVID, then sustainability will be right back to the fore, and are probably more than ever before in terms of making sure that we are having ethical, sustainable and local food that's healthy and nutritious, and that we support education as part of our school meals service on all of those different topics. So I think it will come back, and we are obviously probably well placed to do that as an industry, but maybe there'll be a period of time where actually there might be some trade-offs as we get back to whatever this new normal is, whilst the virus is still around.
It is a fine balance, isn't it? And I think, you know, to provide sort of compliant food in September, if that, you know, part of that solution is using more disposable items, it's a difficult one, but, you know, I guess needs must in some circumstances.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it, in terms of where it sits? It will get up there again, I'm sure, but short term may not.
Yeah. John, I've lost you on the screen, but are you still there? Are you able to respond to that one? You're on mute.
We can't make it work, Neil. We've had to turn him off.
No? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can I just mention one thing as well? One of the things we've done looking at menus, and I'm sure everybody else is in the same boat, we've got huge amounts of stock that need using up before it all runs out. And it's a huge cost, isn't it?
Yeah.
We had a frozen food delivery on the Monday before lockdown. So, you know, and you try and sort of empty your freezers at the end of July, don't you, to get them cleaned and leave them open for the summer. But that's another issue with our menu planning, using up the vast amount of stock that we've already got.
Yeah, no, it's a very valid point, Anita. Absolutely, absolutely. I'll just take one more question here. This is from Jeanette Ori. Most of us will know very well. Heard of a school that has said in September they are only doing packed lunches for universal infant free school meals and free school meals. They've cancelled their provider of hot meals. Any comments on that from anybody? Have any of us heard of similar circumstances?
I haven't, no. I'm conscious of schools asking, like I mentioned before, conscious of schools asking parents to send packed lunches in to ease the pressure, but not actually heard of them dispensing with their provider altogether. That's shocking.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
no.
we haven't heard any. And on the packed lunch issue, we're having a, you know, trying to have a sensible debate about, you know, having all of these packed lunches coming into school is another thing to manage from a COVID safety point of view. So actually, you have a COVID safe kitchen, surely you should be using that COVID safe kitchen rather than bringing in other things that couldn't be COVID safe. And I think when schools hear that narrative and that understanding, they sort of get it, and then they obviously still have the bubbles to manage, and I think it's managing bubbles that's taking all their time and effort at the moment, and that moving children around a school to go and have lunch somewhere is just an added complication for them.
They're trying to
that they're having to work through.
Yeah,
and there'll be lots of trade-offs for them. I do sort of feel for schools having to have lots of these considerations before they come up with their policy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And maybe there's members nearby that school, Jeanette, that can offer some support and advice on how they can continue a meal service, maybe. I don't know where the school is, obviously.
No. Okay, Michael. Meg.
Yeah, I was just going to say from a nutrition perspective, some of the conversations we've been having with schools has been around how difficult it can be to ensure the nutritional quality of a packed lunch. Albeit you can try as hard as you can, but there's nutrients, things like protein, salt, that you really do, you know, a hot school meal is going to provide, you know, ample amounts of those nutrients. It is difficult in a packed lunch, and I think as well, packed lunches from home tend to sometimes in key areas contain high sugar, high salt, high fat foods. So we're trying to encourage them to stick with it and work with us and find solutions that avoid that happening. But it's an interesting point, Jeanette, that Jeanette makes, because we've been having similar conversations with schools, but nobody that's pulled out of the service completely.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Meg. So I'd like to ask one sort of final question. This will be to all of you. And I think we've all sort of experienced the nature of, you know, the core of our business is around school meals, school lunches. Many of us do breakfast, mid-morning breaks, and maybe even after school clubs. So there's been a lot of focus on holiday feeding, as we know, and obviously the voucher scheme that was introduced by the government. But the question, I guess, is to all the panelists, is it time for us to be really focusing and considering a sort of wraparound catering service that picks up all these provisions under the one sort of hat, and working very much more collaboratively, I guess, with schools around sort of nutrition training? What are the panelists' views on that? Michael?
Hang on. I think in some schools this is already happening. In some high schools we already have a wraparound service. I think certainly post-COVID there'll be a much greater demand for it, without a doubt. That's my dog barking, by the way. We're already doing it. I think yes, there will be a greater demand for it. In essence, yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. Anita?
Similar sort of thing to Michael. We have some schools where we do all services, breakfast club, lunch and after school. We have others where there's a mixture. We've done after school, but the school do their own breakfast, so they have families to come in. But one of the questions has been that obviously they're trying to reduce the amount of people that are dealing with and receiving food. So we've actually, I think, got 3 extra breakfast clubs on board for September anyway. So, you know, it's about what we will offer, what schools want us to do. And I do think the more that we can do, the better, because then they know where it's coming from, don't they? There's not lots of things coming into school that they don't know about.
Okay, thank you, Anita. Mark?
Yeah, I guess just echoing what the guys have said in terms of in many schools we do all this, or have been doing all this stuff anyway. I think to a certain extent we've expanded that during lockdown, the weekly hampers and all of the other activities we've been doing to support key workers and vulnerable. So it certainly makes sense that says, look, if we're really going to focus much more in a post-COVID world around community, particularly around levelling up or closing the gap, or focusing on the children that have missed out on some schooling and bringing that back, then having a really strong hub, i.e. the school in the community, where you've got an operational kitchen and a skilled team member of staff to do more than just that one meal a day, 5 days a week when schools are open, makes absolute sense. And I think we should all encourage it. And I know this has been on a number of organisations thinking, and we'll support that. I think it's about timeframes though. I think for now, our efforts should be focused on September and then through to the end of the year to get the school meal service back up and running and being successful again. Because there are, you know, lots of victims out there. You know, caterers are really struggling, schools are really struggling. So I think let's get over that challenge that immediately faces us for the next term, the autumn term. But at the same time, really think about how we can do more for our communities through school meals in the future.
Yeah, I just want to add that we've had some great success in speaking with public health colleagues as well locally, and they're very interested in supporting such schemes as well. So sometimes we might get a blank message from a school back. If you try to get them through public health, they're quite often more willing to listen to how you can help them have that wraparound service. So public health, I would recommend certainly having a chat with wherever you are in the country.
Lovely. Thank you, Michael. And finally, Meg.
Yeah, I think I echo what everybody said, particularly Mark in that piece around, there's 190 meals served to a child if they eat with us every day, but those holiday schemes, they're fantastic. And I think, if we can collaborate more once we've overcome the key challenges we're facing at the moment, then I think it'll be hugely helpful. The public health teams, I can vouch for that, Michael. We speak to ours on a weekly basis, the ones that we have great relationships with, and they do support you in getting messages from our nutrition team through public health with the same agenda into the schools. It kind of a joined up approach, and then the schools join on board, and it does really help. So I can vouch for that as well.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, and for all your sort of openness and transparency and your commentary. I guess what we can do is all look forward to spending our sort of half price voucher, whatever it is, during the course of August, can't we? All eat out, as long as it's between Monday and Wednesday, to support the wider industry. So at this point, what I'd like to do is just obviously thank you all for your contributions, and hopefully we're going to have a bit of a poll, which is a bit groundbreaking for us. So really it's one question. And the question is, Stephen Forster, our National Chair, is due to meet with Vicky Ford, MP Minister for Children, next week. And if there was one question or one wish that you would like to have of these 5 options that hopefully have come up on your screen now, we'd like you to tick one of those boxes, please, or click on one of those boxes. And if you do that and submit it, hopefully we will have the results of that poll come up, and then that will give Stephen the key question to take to Vicky when he meets with her next week. So if you can please take your option and submit.
It's hard to pick 2, Neil.
Sorry?
It's quite difficult to pick 2.
I know. Yes, sorry. So Andrew, I'm relying on you when you've got all the results in.
Going to give it another sort of 15 seconds. So we're up to 150 people having put their thoughts in.
Okay. So we're sorry we're
still going up.
Okay, sorry we've missed John. There was a problem with the connection there, but we'll try and, as I say, get up on the website his sort of summary, his position.
Okay, so there are your results now.
Okay, so so we've got school lunches free to all. 51% is the outright statement then, closely followed by the universal free school meal value being increased to, well, 251. I think LACA we're sort of pitching it at, but given the voucher scheme was offering £3, then I think we should be maybe making a firmer statement around £3. And then you can see for yourselves then the ban on food bought from home was next. The action to bring all food in schools under the control of the school meal service. And then lastly, end the voucher scheme for end of the summer holidays. But I think that's probably a given anyway. I think that's going to end at the end of August. So so Stephen, there maybe your top 2 you can sort of take away as your questions and statements with Vicky next week. So brilliant. Thanks very much, everybody, for voting on that. So at this stage then, I'd like to hand over to Jessica. So Jessica Crane is the senior nutritionist for Chartwells and has been the lead on the allergens project working with LACA. So over to you, Jessica, if you'd like to tell us where we're at and the trials that have been undertaken. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Neil. If you just give me one moment, I will put some slides up as well so that you can see. Can I have a thumbs up if that's working?
Yeah, all good, Jessica.
Great. Okay, right, I'll get started. So yes, many of you may have seen me speak about this project at previous LACA seminars. So for those of you who have, I hope this will be refreshing information. I'll be able to update you a bit on what we've done even throughout COVID and what we've picked up again in terms of this project. And for those who don't know about it, I'll be able to give you a bit of information and hopefully excite you with some new resources that LACA will be able to offer you. I think, first of all, before I start, I just want to say that I personally feel quite grateful for the shift in thinking that's actually happened recently in terms of focusing more on safety that Mark alluded to earlier, in terms of actually this becoming something that schools and caterers and indeed the whole public are now more focused on, because it's something I think that always merited that level of interest, and now more than ever we've actually got people listening. So this is a fantastic time for us to be doing this kind of work in terms of allergens, and yes, it's slightly different to the safety focus that COVID brings, but still very similar principles in terms of contamination, etc. So it's, for me, I think actually a fantastic time for us to be doing a project like this as well. Just in summary, for those who don't know the background or haven't been able to hear me speak before, LACA have been working for the last year to try and address an issue which we know is faced by almost every school and every caterer across the country and the nation, that actually allergies are increasing rapidly. We know the incidence that of allergies is going up and up and up. And actually the first people that are presenting with these allergies are children in schools. So for school caterers, it's just becoming a bigger and bigger challenge to manage. We know, I know where I work, that we have some schools with, you know, up to 30 to 40 children with different allergies. So it definitely is a big challenge. And the way that caterers and schools are addressing that varies hugely across the country. So LACA set out to develop some guidance that would provide caterers and schools with some really clear actions they could take to make sure they're doing things as safely as they possibly can, and to sort of set an industry-wide standard that everyone could adhere to make sure that they really are doing the best and offering the best and safest service that they can. So that's what this project was all about. I must thank the working group who put in a lot of hours over the last year to develop this. It's not been a singular project. There have been people involved from all kinds of catering backgrounds to make sure, again, that obviously the guidance we provide is fit for purpose in all the different settings that we all work in. So that's what this has all been about. And ultimately, the purpose is to make sure we can all cater for children with confidence and serve them safely, regardless of their allergy. So what have we actually produced? Well, there's been a guidance document produced, which is about 7 pages long. So it provides enough detail to be really useful, but actually it's quite approachable at the same time. And in that guidance, there's 3 different sections. First of all, we cover the legal requirements about how we should be managing allergens in school. That's certainly something which can cause confusion, and we just clarify a little bit about what that means. Secondly, we go on to a really important section, which is the roles and responsibilities of the different parties, particularly the school and the parent and the caterer. And I urge everyone who looks at this guidance to really pay attention to this section, because I think this is where a lot of the issues stem from. It's not necessarily knowing which direction to look in to resolve particular problems and who should be responsible for what. And the working group really bashed their heads together and came up with what we thought was the safest and best approach to all these different challenges. And that's set out in a very clear way in that section of the guidance, but also how we then communicate between ourselves as well. And then finally, a really useful section for communicating with parents about allergen management in commercial kitchens. This is another area we know that caterers struggle with. A lot of parents don't necessarily associate the challenges that they have at home with the challenges that we see in our kitchens. And so this section of the document will really help sort of communicate the differences and explain why we might make certain decisions one way or another in school meal provision. So that's a bit of background on what that guidance is. In terms of updates which have recently happened, that guidance has now achieved copyright, which is fantastic news. And we will be putting that guidance live on the LACA website, which will be in the public domain so that it can be used and shared with your schools, your parents, whoever need be, to have those discussions. And that will be going live by mid-August. So we're really excited about that. And I think it's really important that is in the public domain. In the meantime, LACA have been having discussions with the Department for Education to see how we can link up with them and make sure that they signpost to this guidance. We had been having discussions earlier in the year, and then obviously COVID happened, which has delayed things a little bit, but we're picking that back up again now. So hopefully next time I speak, I can update you on where that's got to. I'll just whistle over this one in the interest of time, but I thought it was worth just flagging some of the feedback we have collated already on that guidance. The majority has been overwhelmingly positive. People believing that it really will help them. It's something that they think is quite comprehensive, and that also it has been a group effort and actually will be fit for purpose for the different settings. So that's fantastic. Obviously, if anyone wants to have any of this feedback afterwards, please let me know and I can share it so you can read it when there's more time. A second part of what we've produced with this LACA working group is the risk analysis process. So this is a really tangible tool that we hope will help schools and their caterers to actually assess the risks on the ground in terms of serving individual pupils who present with a medical diet and want to eat at school. So there's 3 different sections to this as well that cover all the different aspects of catering. So not just the actual allergy itself that the child has, but actually what kind of kitchen are we looking at, what kind of space do they have, and how engaged are the school, what kind of relationship do we have with that school, and what kind of partnership is already established. And the fantastic thing about this tool is that it will give you, on completion of it, a risk rating for any particular medical diet, special diet request that you receive, either high, medium or low. Sorry, it looks like the image is distorted a little there, but that should say medium and then low. And those risk ratings will then enable you to go forward and have the relevant discussions you need to have with all the relevant people, and hopefully work to a solution to be able to provide a safe menu for whichever child you've road tested this for. So obviously it requires a lot of common sense as well, and it will require individual decisions to be made in each individual caterer's own way, but this should help provide a baseline and a solid standard so that caterers can be reassured they've assessed all the individual risk and then had something they can use to actually have conversations with the parents and with the school. In terms of updates on this element, we've also got that copyrighted, which is great, and we have been surveying it to get some really real life case study data, which I'll talk about in a moment briefly. This tool will be accessible online as well in the same way that the guidance is. However, it will be controlled by a LACA member login. So this won't be in the public domain for use, but actually we think this is really fantastic member benefit for LACA members, and also a really good benefit to doing it this way is that we can actually collect some data by using it online within a controlled way, that will enable us to look at national trends for how allergies are forming across the UK and how we're managing them as caterers. And it will enable us to review the tool in the future if we can collate that data in a secure way. So we'll be able to then take that information on to, say, the Department for Education and drive the change that potentially we need to happen. So that's how that's going to be managed. And again, we hope that will be released later this summer in time for use in September. So I mentioned that we've been surveying this risk analysis process just to get some case study data, and also just to obviously validate it and make sure that we get some feedback to ensure that what's been produced is again fit for purpose. And I just wanted to summarise some of the results we've got so far. I must stress the survey is still ongoing, so these figures may change when we get to the final end date. But at the moment, we can see that in the majority of cases, it's being used in a primary setting, which is what we expected. We know that's one of the areas we get the most requests for support. And fantastically, 94% of those who took part and used this survey so far, used the risk assessment so far, said they did agree that actually it would help support in communicating risks to parents and schools. Additionally to that, 75%, about 3/4, agreed that the risk assessment rating that they achieved from having used the tool was what they would have done, what they would have expected for that kind of a request. So we know that it is producing the right sort of result. And of the 25% who disagreed, it was a very even split between whether it should have been higher or lower. So I think it's not that it's skewed in any one direction, and we do think that actually the result is accurate. Of the results, the majority median result was medium risk, which again is what we would expect. And of the high risk, we saw about 15% of those who were using it coming out as high risk. And again, I think this is a really good result because it shows that we are able to identify that smaller number of really high risk pupils, and then we can use that information to go and have conversations with them. So it really does identify the highest level of risk, enabling us to dedicate time to them when we need to. And just to finally summarize the sort of sample of people that who've been using this tool so far in the survey, and it's a real mix. So we know that the data again is representative of the catering world, and we've got about 50% of them being from contract caterers, 40% local authorities, and 10% in-house. That's some stats so far. And this slide now just shows you some of the wording that's come through in the feedback boxes that we've had. So again, in terms of risk, we've had some really great feedback that it definitely will support people, that it's eye-opening, which helps people to have conversations in their own firms and look into the way they do things. In terms of usability, we had some interesting feedback that people said, whilst they thought it was really quick and easy to use, they would suggest some more in-depth questions. I think this was a really interesting point because as I said earlier, we need to ensure that whilst this is guidance, whilst this is a supporting tool, it can never be the final say. There's got to be an element of common sense and an element of companies' own health and safety and allergen policies coming into play here as well. So I think that was interesting feedback because actually it hit the nail on the head with where we want this to sit. It cannot be too dictatorial. And actually some other people did go on to say that they really liked the fact they could still use some common sense and it wasn't dictatorial in that way. So I think that was quite an interesting balance. And again, some communication feedback was that actually, yeah, it will give really clear backing. It could be used to promote change, which is exactly what we want. And then it can open up a framework for discussion. So some really positive feedback coming through while we still continue to do that survey now. So I think that brings me to my final slide. I'm very conscious of the time. My main message to finish on really is that for this allergen guidance to really have the impact, we hope it will, we would love for everyone to incorporate this guidance into their catering policies in terms of how they manage allergens in schools. And in doing so, we'll be able to provide consistent support for schools, caterers and parents across the nation, ultimately to ensure that as many children as possible can safely enjoy a school meal. And I think this is really important at the moment when we know that a lot of parents are anxious about sending their children back to school. And this guidance and this risk assessment process can really provide some concrete evidence that actually we do take that responsibility for their care very seriously and that we will do everything within our power to keep them safe. And I think that's a really solid message, as I said, as I started with, you know, safety is at the forefront of everyone's minds now. So this is a really fantastic way that we can demonstrate we're not just thinking about COVID, we're still thinking about all the other elements that are involved in safety and keeping children safe at school too. So I think that's all from me. Neil, I'll hand back to you if that's all right.
Jessica, thank you very much for that. From a real big thank you from LACA for your role that you've played in really sort of taking this forward. It's a great, fantastic piece of work, and you know, really look forward to embedding that in our policies as operators. So thank you. So that brings us to the end of the session. So we should have a final slide there's coming up. Thank you, Andrew. So the next webinar then is Wednesday, July the 22nd at 11 o'clock. That's with Holly Charnock, who's our current National Winner School Chef of the Year. We'll be doing a demo, and followed by the importance of school meals from Greta DeFrito. So look forward to that. We will be working on a programme of seminars beyond July into the autumn term as well, until we are confident and comfortable in having those sort of get-togethers that we all do like to have. Our social piece, aren't we? There's the membership details there and a number to call if you're a non-member and you'd like to become a member to get the benefits that we talked about today. The videos will go on the website, and as I said, any questions we haven't been able to answer, we will pick those questions up and do a response within the next week or so via the website as well. So that just leaves me to say thank you for everybody taking part. Thank you again to the panelists and to Jessica, and for you attending today. I hope you found it useful and look forward to picking up with you next time. Thank you. Have a good day.